Welcome to the Regen Biome Podcast. Hi, I'm your host, Gene Felix Turcotte, a certified integrative health practitioner, level 1 and 2, certified in blood chemistry and functional lab testing. I love helping people with GI issues, weight loss, mold exposure, heavy metals, mysterious problems, and health optimization. I love helping people get to the root cause of their health struggles and simplify healing. Ready to transform your health? Go to regionbiome.com and click book a call. All the support is greatly appreciated. If you enjoy, please write a 5-star review on iTunes or the platform of your choice. Enjoy the podcast and please share this with anyone that this would help. Welcome to episode 19 of the Regen Biome Podcast. In today's episode, I have the pleasure to interview Dr. Mara Bargeron. On this episode, we are going to be unpacking a critical topic of preconception planning, how important that is, many things about blood chemistry that needs to be addressed before conceiving and thinking of having a child, fixing nutritional deficiencies, looking for things like infections before conceiving. And so there's multiple steps and really a critical topic that I think is very important to talk about. And because I think that children deserves to have the best life as possible. They come to life on this earth, not by choice. So I think they deserve really, it's a very important thing to address. But again, before we begin, please note that the information shared in this episode is for educational purposes only and should not be considered a medical advice. We always recommend consulting with a qualified healthcare professional regarding your specific health concerns or condition. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Regen Biome Podcast. Today's guest, I have the beautiful, amazing Dr. Mara on the show. I'm really excited to have her on. We're going to be talking about, she's going to be sharing her story, but sharing a lot about preconception and female mom health, kids health, and all of that, how important that is. So welcome, Mara.
Hello. Excited for our conversation.
Hello. I know it's been a while. So, I mean, it's going to be, because we've been chatting for quite some time, a little bit on genetics, and we had conversation going back and forth on Instagram a few times. And so I thought, why not do a podcast on that? So I think that would be a perfect thing for people. And my question to you is like, what got you started in the health space, in the health field? Like, what got you here? Like, why? Because I think like oftentimes we all start from a place of our own struggle, but I haven't got the chance to hear your story. So I'd love to hear this.
Yeah, well, I actually, funny enough, I always call it like my first life, but I used to be a neuropsychologist and I worked in the schools actually. So I used to diagnose kids for a number of disabilities to qualify them for special education services. And kind of back in, I think I was doing my internship in 2012 or 2011. And I remember just talking to a lot of kind of baby boomer teachers, like veteran teachers, and they would always tell me things like, things have changed so drastically since, when I taught in the 90s and the 80s, and, we didn't have like allergen free classrooms, like, no peanut classrooms. We didn't have so many kids on, that had inhalers for asthma. We didn't have so many kids with behavioral disorders and, neurodevelopmental disorders. And I'm just a very curious, investigative mind. So I always like to figure things out. And I always took those, those career quizzes and when you were in school.
I remember those.
It always came up with detective for me, which kind of like really goes along with like my career as like a neuropsych, because I had to figure out why kids were struggling in school. And now like in the root cause, I kind of call myself a root cause practitioner, but as a root cause practitioner, I'm sure you can relate. We have to figure out what's going on with people. Like, why don't they feel well? And how do we get to the bottom of, what their underlying conditions or their root causes are? So it's a very investigative path. So that's always just been very interesting to me. So I just kind of just went on this deep dive and completely changed careers. I think I was like 1 year in when I decided, okay, well, I think I'm going to go in a different direction. I kind of want to, I started just
Mm,
researching a lot and seeing like the root causes of a lot of these conditions and why, just as a society, we're just far unhealthier than we used to be. Had lots of conversations with parents and grandparents and how, their perspective and how, things were just
mm,
so drastically different. Even talking to my grandma, she would tell me like she had never met anyone in her whole life that struggled with fertility. She had never really, seen like a child with autism until like the late 90s. Um, just like a drastic difference that's happened in a very short period of time. So I just got very
huge.
interested more so in like trying to kind of more so heal these kids so they just have, a better life, better outcomes, so they can kind of be the best version of themselves, the healthiest version of themselves, but also trying to prevent these things from happening in the first place. So that's kind of where now I feel like my biggest passion is working with women in the preconception kind of stage of life.
Mm. And it's such a huge thing, such a huge need. So, and kudos to you. I know, and going to school is not like it's not an easy thing. I will say, like, I mean, I didn't go through uni or all of that. So kudos to you. And I think, and we all go into this space, and we really want to make a difference. And you touch base on some key things. And it's funny because I had my grandmother here visiting not long ago, and we were having this conversation, and just like you mentioned, like how we didn't have any of these conditions before, and my grandmother like basically like grew up in like in a house where there was no cars. There was like she really lived that time of where there was no electricity in the house. There was like there's no electric stove, and so but none of that stuff was happening, and people weren't getting sick. And I asked her, I'm like, what was the diet like? And it was what we were getting from the garden or from the farm, and that was it. So it's so interesting and how things started really shifting in the 90s. And I'm a 90s baby. I was born in 1992.
Mhm.
So, and I, I don't know. It's crazy the big shift that we went through. And I didn't grow up like on a bunch of like I would say junk food, but it's yeah, some of it I would say was processed, but not most of it. But and do you find like most of the people that you see like with preconception, is that like a huge thing that people are struggling with diet and being, or do you what from what you see, how is diet impactful in preconception?
Oh, it's huge. I will say with my audience, I don't get a lot of people who, tell me that they're eating like Chick-fil-A every day or they're eating like a lot of processed foods. Um, but they but they're still not, we definitely need to optimize their diet. There's very few, I think we had, talked DM'd a couple times about the chronometer and how, impactful that
I
can
love
be
coriander.
in really like optimizing your diet because we do. And I didn't think this years ago. I thought as long as you're eating just a whole food diet, organic, grass fed meats, pastured meats, but it does go far beyond that, in order to optimize your diet. And I think with blood work, and also I also used HTMA, which can kind of show your oxidation status, if you're like a
Hmm.
slow oxidizer, fast oxidizer, mixed. That can, your blood work and that can kind of help us figure out, along with what conditions you have, if you've been exposed to mold or if you have thyroid issues, adrenal issues, can kind of help us figure out what diet would be optimal for you, because there's is no diet out there that is going to work for everyone. And I know a lot of people try a lot of these things. Like there's no one's gonna always benefit from the paleo diet or keto or anything like that. I feel like it really does need to be optimized.
100%. I mean, it's never a one size fits all for everybody, and I know like more of your expertise is really around thyroid function, and maybe we can just dive into that. And like, what are the common things you see in preconception when mothers are coming to you and because they're struggling with which issues, either if it's I'm not sure like if it's a lot of infertility, PCOS. I
Mhm.
know being a big thing on it's like it's so popular, and thyroid issues. It's just, and I mean for us in Canada, like and I talked about this yesterday in my stories, and I was like, it is almost impossible to get a full thyroid run up or check in Canada. So, how's that been for you, like with the whole thyroid, and how does that work? What do you see the most? And yeah, so we can
Yeah,
dive into
I
that.
feel like when women come to me, whether it's in the preconception phase or not, I do see a lot of common themes. Lots of women kind of telling me they feel like they're in fight or flight. They feel like they're in the exhaustion kind of burnout phase, especially if they're mothers. Obvious kind of
Mhm.
adrenal hormone, including thyroid issues, just very low energy, low libido, um, just kind of overall not feeling a lot of energy and vitality. Is just really common with a lot of moms that I work with.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, it's, and then with kids as well, too, is like because normally with when people come, so you normally have like a full rundown with thyroid or like blood work, and um,
Yeah,
like
I
what
think
do you normally like to look at?
with adults, I haven't found anyone that would not benefit from a lot of functional blood work and an HTMA. I do love the hair tissue mineral analysis. In kids, it really depends. It really kind of depends on their presenting conditions, whether or not, like an organic acids test is going to be helpful, or, a stool test or bioelectrics
Yeah.
or things like that. But I do feel, and I know your expertise is a lot in, epigenetics and the genetic side of things, which I'm always like very fascinated by. I do think a lot of women at the preconception level could really benefit from just knowing more like how to optimize their
Mm.
genes.
Oh, 100%. And I think, I mean, and I know we both really enjoy that topic and in
Yeah.
preconception. And I think like understanding that, and to this day, I think like most even thyroid issues, or I think a lot of people are really struggling with poor absorption, but poor micronutrient status. And this is why I love like and how you use the tool with chronometer. And chronometer is such a great tool. I mean, it just can tell you really what you're getting in, and but how much of that do we get? We don't know exactly, but at least it gives you like a pretty darn amazing like you can see how much vitamin A I'm getting in, how much vitamin D, E, A, and K, and all of that. So, but micronutrient deficiencies definitely, and on a genetic standpoint, I think in preconception, um, my goodness, the first two thing that comes to mind is definitely making sure you're choline. So because what was that? I was looking at. I just did a big presentation on blood chemistry, and is it Precision Nutrition. They had a chart back in 2009 that they did. Choline was not part of it, but I know choline is one of the thing that for cell membrane. So if your cells don't have the choline and enough phosphorus, I don't think it's a problem nowadays. When people eat a lot of processed foods, you get a lot of phosphorus in it. But people that are actually eating pretty darn healthy, actually kind of I see it oftentimes. People can be low in some really these key nutrients or minerals, but choline being one of them. Estrogen will help boost that, but that's why I feel like, my goodness, if you look into like MTHFR, I mean, your methylation, some people, it's such a big word that just turns on and turns off genetics, but it's not that complex. Like, well, it's complex, but it's not, we don't have to overcomplicate it. But if you're not having enough choline, definitely for methylation, then your MTHFR pathway is going to work a lot more than your
Yeah.
PC. So it can go both ways. So if one starts going down because it's not getting enough substrate or like B9 per se or zinc, then the other one's going to work more. So, and this is where I think with a lot of people, it's going to be a big problem, because if one starts running down and overusing some key nutrients, it's going to be a big problem. So, especially for cells and like brain development and and kids, it's huge.
Oh, definitely. I remember there's a study I really love that showed, when moms have optimal choline levels, at preconception and during pregnancy, that's really predictive of kids' memory, their attention, and their processing speed in childhood. So, that can really help foster like a solid higher IQ in kids. So, and even with other nutrients, we know in pregnancy, moms, pregnancy typically takes like I think it's like 4 pounds of mom's minerals, like 30% micronutrients. And I mean, I think
Wow.
we can, it's safe to say, I don't know the exact figures on this, but probably 90 something percent at least of moms, if not more, are, deficient themselves, at preconception, much less, having enough. And, your body will take what it needs for that baby. So I think a lot of times, and even other nutrients like vitamin D, iron, zinc, that can cause like low growth for babies. So, we really need to be aware of like your micronutrient status, your mineral status is extremely important during that preconception, prenatal phase, just to make sure that, you're going to have a healthy pregnancy. Your child will be as healthy as possible. And, you know, and after the baby's born.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's crazy. I think to the point of my, I mean, I'm not a fan of micronutrients panel per se. Some
Mm-hmm.
more markers than others, but definitely having that check, and that's good. That's amazing. Like if you and even you said like tracking that with clients. Do you test a lot like your micronutrients or things with clients per se?
Not often. It's also kind of an expensive test. So I more
I
so
know.
do the HTMA, and I try to look at other things like through blood work, if I can, because
Yeah.
that a lot of people, don't have, as a lot of the most important functional labs out there are not covered by insurance. So, I try to utilize blood work and HTMA,
Oh,
which are just a little bit more affordable than, running
absolutely.
micronutrient panels and having people spend thousands of dollars on
Mhm.
lab.
Oh, and I mean, just a simple CBC panel and CMP panel can tell you so much
Oh
on
yeah.
somebody's
Oh yeah.
metabolic functions, micronutrients, especially micronutrients. And it's to me, it's ludicrous that most people, this is probably like a CBC and CMP are probably, I don't know, I would love to see the stats of this and how many of these specific labs are being run worldwide. It's
Mm.
insane. Like this is like the OGs. Like this is where blood work shines so much because I'm like, well, my like, and it can tell you like B6 deficiencies, B12, B9, vitamin C, and iron, and a lot of these like zinc, copper, being what calcium, potassium, sodium. All of this can tell you, and sodium potassium pump. And I that's one thing that I actually recently, how responsible, and a lot of people with thyroid issues, they say like thyroid really regulates the metabolism, but what actually does that is the sodium and potassium pump. There's so much to like unravel with this, and not like even myself to dig into. But I'm like, whoa! I'm like, if we don't have like our pH or our pH balance, if you're too acidic, it's going to be an issue, which you can tell from like a CMP panel and your
Yeah.
kidneys. I think this is what we were talking about with chronometer. And I asked you about the Prowl score. Are you actually like looking at this because it's a cool feature that's on the Pro one, I think, but it's like your
Yeah.
kidneys will take years before it can actually. And I'm not sure if you heard the same thing too, but like you can have one kidney, and on blood chemistry, it could look completely normal.
Oh, I know. Same with liver
So if it's like,
enzymes. Like I feel the liver enzymes, I feel like, I mean, I have so many people who I know for absolute certainty, just with their symptoms, that they've got sluggish liver pathways. And then, the liver enzymes will be like completely normal, like in the optimal range. So I do feel like it takes a
exactly.
long time sometimes for it to show up.
Oh man, I mean it's the same thing, and I don't know if you run serum bile acids in with clients,
Yeah.
um,
Hmm.
but oh amazing! I'm like not that I don't hear a lot of people running it, and I think that's just something. Do you see women that have issues? Because I mean we're talking about bile, and I've been like preaching bile for the past couple of days, and I'm like, okay, you guys, like you got to listen up, after this blood. this blood work presentation that I did. I'm like, "Oh, this just lit a fire in me." And I saw some of the studies like with bile acids being, I know we're digging into blood work, but it's so important. But especially with women with cholestasis, right, stagnating bile. So do you see this a
Yeah.
lot of a woman that has like stagnation of bile?
Oh yeah, I see lots of bile issues, and we know like with women, gallbladder issues are actually more common in women than men. So it's absolutely something that a typical physician is typically not going to look at. I've never seen someone send me their blood work from their PCP or whomever, and it actually have that on there. As you know, I mean, I think, physicians, they're kind of looking at more life or death things, and they're not really necessarily
Mm-hmm.
looking at, prevention and optimal health, obviously.
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's and we need acute medicine. Like we need acute care, of course. Like I
Yes.
mean, that's why I always say the same thing. If you break your arm, you just don't come see me because it's not gonna go well. Can't do nothing. Well, I can help you in repair and how can we heal that faster once you get that fixed. But I mean, otherwise, I'm like, can't do anything.
Oh,
But no,
sometimes
it's so
we have
important, I
people.
think. And in bile. Oh, go ahead,
Oh,
go
yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, I experience that sometimes too, where I have people that come to me a little too late, where I'm like, well, I think you need to be screened by an MD. If they're kind of coming to me with an urgent issue, like I do have a lot of success with gallbladder issues with women who
Mhm.
get like gallstones and things like that. But if you kind of come to me a little too late, where it's about to rupture, I can't really help you at that point. Or you've got bloody stools or something like that. Like we've kind of gonna have to work
Oh
with
yeah,
your
yes, yeah,
conventional medicine doctor at that point.
absolutely. Yeah, and what and gallstones and that, like, how do you go about that? Like, what do you like? What's your most, I'll say not natural approach, but what's your approach with that? Like, what? How do you go about it?
Well, I've worked with a lot of people with gallbladder issues, a lot of women, and they all tend to have different things going on. For some people, I see like a lot of like estrogen dominance. I see a lot of like blood sugar issues. Lack of bile. Just their diet is just very deficient. Um, I see a lot of like mold exposure that can contribute to that. So it's definitely bio individual, but I have had a lot of success in women who report like just a lot of gallbladder pains, and then, kind of no longer having those pains. And, even many, they've gone back to their PCP or whomever, their GI doctor, and they kind of did like they looked at their gallbladder again and they've seen like just a drastic decrease, or complete elimination of like the
Mm.
gallstones. So it is possible. It's just you have to address things when you start seeing symptoms versus when waiting too long to where it becomes kind of an emergency type of situation.
Yeah, and I think like the whole bile stagnation, that's going to be a massive contributor to that. So to gallstones and having this cholesterol. Crystal, I mean, there's so much fear mongering with like oxalates. Like, I don't know how you feel with. I mean, there's
Yeah.
so many different thoughts on that. And I'm just like, really, I'm like, I have one of my great men, my mentor Joel Green. It's just amazing. He just really unraveled that. How really the gut microbiome, optimizing the gut microbiome is really important to break down oxalates, or like a B6 going to be a big
Oh,
problem. Because in order for you
yes,
to
I
convert
see that a
those
lot.
oxalates, yeah, it's huge.
Yeah,
It's
I see a lot of
massive.
those.
And so I don't do, yeah, and I
Oh,
don't
go
do
ahead.
a whole lot of, I think we have like a small delay. That's why. So I'm not trying to cut you off. Sometimes it might sound like, but that's okay. We'll just go a bit slower. Uh, but yeah, with thyroid, like this is why, because I will run thyroid panels, but I think there's a lot maybe to learn from it, and from a I don't know, from your perspective, like how do you like to approach like thyroid issues, or hypothyroidism is probably the most common thing. But what do you normally see or like to do when it comes down to some cases with hypothyroid or thyroid issues in general?
I see a lot of it's kind of rare that I see hyper, like you said. It's usually more hypo, kind of reduced thyroid function at the cellular level. Um, but I think with blood work, we can kind of see what's kind of happening as to like what could be like a root cause versus, and I'm not saying not, some women won't need, medication like Armor or things like that. I'm not saying that, in 100% of cases you can completely avoid it. But I do work with a lot of women who we are able to kind of reverse that. And I think in blood work, and I also use HTMA as well, but I think in blood work, when you run
Mm-hmm.
a full panel, you can see specifically what's causing that. Like for me, it was a lot of nervous system dysregulation, adrenal issues, stress that was causing a lot of my thyroid issues. Sluggish liver is going to cause that. Any kind of like infection, inflammation in the body can cause a lot of that. Um, so I think just running a full panel, even, certain gut issues are going to cause that. Deficiencies, most women are not getting like enough selenium, they're not getting enough iodine in their diet. And it seems almost criminal that we're not looking at someone's diet before we're putting them on thyroid meds. Um, but just a lot of foundational things are really impactful to help women with this hypothyroid and hypothyroid symptoms that they're
Mm.
having.
Absolutely, and that's why it goes back to micronutrients foundation. I mean, how often we see this like low selenium, low iodine, or vitamin A. I mean, oh my goodness, like vitamin A is if you want to have a glow and your skin and your immune system. Like now, people like if you're. I mean, this is my podcast, but I'm like, if people are freaking out for winter coming, I'm like, well, optimize your micronutrient status, and you'll do a lot better.
Yeah.
um, Vitamin
And even
A being one of them. Like,
Yeah, and even from a preconception standpoint, I mean, thyroid function is just imperative before you conceive a child because your baby is initially going to be utilizing and relying on mom's thyroid function. So that's just in it can there's just a lot of complications that can come from low thyroid function, like miscarriages in women.
oh, I didn't know that. Actually, wow, that's interesting. That's interesting, actually. So, I
Yeah, there's
mean, yeah, because
um, a lot of different conditions even that you can prevent. I think with preconception prep, it can really help you first of all have an easier time conceiving. It can help you have an easier pregnancy. I think it's so ingrained in us that pregnancy is supposed to be like this awful period of time where you're just so symptomatic and you're just throwing up and nauseous and you've got HG, and you're swollen and you have acid reflux and you're on bed rest. Like none of those things are common, and I think you can absolutely avoid a lot of that, and also just having an easier labor, um, with less complications and having just healthier offspring with a child that is just healthy, optimally healthy, and doesn't experience health complications and neurodevelopmental delays and developmental delays in general. I think that preconception stage is just really, really imperative, to kind of reversing a lot of those things. Like we know with HG, like women who are like throwing up quite a
what
bit.
is HG?
Yeah, that's so something to know about me. I'm horrible at pronouncing things. And once
That's
like I
no, that's okay. That's okay.
think it's like hypermeses gavardium or something. I know I'm
Okay,
pronouncing it wrong. Anytime it's like
okay,
H.
condition.
pylori.
Okay,
I know it's like H. pylori. But like every time it's like once I pronounce something a certain way, it's like my brain has a hard time pronouncing it the correct way once I know how to correctly pronounce it. But yeah, HG is for, with when a lot of women have just like vomiting. A lot of times it's throughout the entire pregnancy or it's throughout the entire first trimester, like 3 months. A lot of women I work with, they have had it sometimes even 5 months in, where they even have to be hospitalized because they're just not getting, extremely dehydrated. They're not eating because they're just throwing up on a daily basis, sometimes multiple times a day.
Mm.
So, and I think a lot of people think it's, how everyone says like everything's genetic, but it's like when doctors don't
Mm-mm.
have like a reason behind something, I feel like the genetic word kind of comes
Honey,
kind of
it's idiopathic. We don't know, so let's call it it's your genetics.
yes. But I've worked with, we know, and I know from research, it's like all over PubMed. And I've worked with so many moms with this, where I've worked with them on the,
That's crazy.
optimal health and, kind of working on a lot of their underlying conditions and root causes, and they have not had it in their subsequent pregnancies. I've had women who've had it with their first two, and I've worked with them before their third one, and they haven't had it on their third one. So there are reasons for it. A couple big ones that we know of are mast cell activation and H. pylori. Is a
Ooh.
Yeah, are some root causes to that. So and even kind of when you look at autism, it's kind of like a very complex condition. There's not like one thing that causes it, but there's a lot of research even on maternal immune activation, and when moms have infections like autoimmunity, or they've got type 1 type 2 diabetes, like a lot of inflammation during pregnancy, like that maternal immune activation can like induce microglial activation, oxidative stress, significant like mitochondrial dysfunction, and that can cause like neuroinflammation and neurodevelopmental pathologies in kids. So there's just so many things that you can prevent.
Oh, I love that you touch base on this and you talked about mast cell. Oh my gosh, I'm like, which rabbit hole are we gonna dig in? It's crazy, and I mean, I'm a huge fan. Obviously, one of my mentors is the Holistic Savage, so Brendan Vermeyer. So you talked about microglial activation, which that's the whole like the whole program is on that, and mental health and autistic children, and he worked a lot with autism. But autism, like it's I mean, it's like it's booming like crazy, but like you said, it's a multi aspect, and so many people get triggered. I'm like, well, we just have to ask better questions. Like, where does this come from? Like, how did, because it wasn't there before and it's only getting worse. I'm just like, we have to ask these proper questions. Oh, okay. Yes, there was one cool thing you said. So, when women were actually, so when you're conceiving, but there was one cool thing that I saw about immune activation is the time of the year that you conceive. So women that were conceiving uh, during the winter, it would be sometime it could be worse because you can get more sick. So I'm just like, okay, I'm not telling you. Maybe you should think, maybe have a child like in spring. I don't know. Is there to your own opinion? Just like why not? Like let's ask. Is there a best time of the year to actually as much as people want to, and I've had this like happen to my friends all the time. They say, I want to get pregnant now, or specifically, but it never turns out to be that way, or it's on a trip, or it's in Vegas, or somewhere else. But would you, would you say, this is something that actually you've come across, or a pattern you might have seen, like that kids that are having more issues were actually conceived in wintertime?
I haven't seen that clinically, but it does make sense. I mean, a lot of people do have more sickness in the fall kind of winter. For me, I rarely get sick, but if I do, it's 100% of the time in the summer, always in July. I don't know why that is. But I also, when I was pregnant, because I am aware of this, I was not sick my entire pregnancy. Um, because it's not to say something's going to happen. I don't want women to be like
No,
extremely
no, exactly. Yeah.
about it, but I think it goes really far beyond that, where I do see so many moms and kids that I work with who, you know, their kids have autism or a number of other things, and they had a lot of infection in during
Mm.
pregnancy. So that I do see more. I do see where moms have autoimmune conditions. They've got elevated, you know, thyroid antibodies, just a lot of inflammation, like, you know, their SED rate, their CRP, those things are just really elevated during pregnancy. So that I'm definitely more concerned about. And I do have so many moms that kind of come to me and they're like, I really want to get pregnant in like 2 months. I'm like, I can't really do a lot for you in 2 months. I mean, you know, by the time you run labs and you have your intake, I mean, that's like a month later that you're meeting. So I always my slogan is always like, prepare for pregnancy as you would your wedding. Like most people, a lot of women out there, they really want to have like this wedding and it be a magical day and they want everything planned perfectly and et cetera, et cetera. But but you have to prepare. Ideally, I know surprises happen, but ideally if you can and if you're aware of this, which is why I just want to get this message out there, and podcasts like this will help, you know, with that reach that a prepare
Mm.
not enough, but just if you can, just a year before you plan to conceive, just start working on preconception health.
This is so good. I think I found the caption for this episode. I think this is gonna be treat preconception just like you would do for your wedding. Oh my gosh, this is the caption. This is gonna be, this is amazing actually. And it's so true. And I have clients like in running the genetics and you know, I'm so busy. I got my, like, I just had a client recently just got married, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, really, people, like, you're going all in with this. I'm like, kudos. I'm like, but I'm like, whoa. I'm like, if people would put the same amount of time and energy in preconception, 100%, and just like you would do for a wedding, oh my
Yes.
God. I'm like, this is, and, or the same amount of investment
Yes.
money into this. I'm like,
I
you
mean,
will have the better.
how expensive are weddings? I
And
mean,
I think I mean, I haven't got, well, no, that's another story for another day. I can't say I didn't get married, but whoops, at some point in my life, we do things when we're young, but it's okay. But yeah, I mean, that's just like such a huge thing. I think investing in your health now, or it's not even like in the message that what you're bringing as well is you're not just investing in your own health, you're investing, you know, you're investing right now in some in a child that will be born, but I mean, you're responsible for it all. And I think that's my thing with this. I think in kids deserve the best, period. And I mean, and if you're, and I'm not saying I don't want this to even come across like it's being hard on people, but I'm like, if conceiving a child is so darn like meaningful and for so many people and for some good reason, you know, I personally, I'm open to it, but will I have a child? I don't know, with the right partner and stuff. But the thing is, I think it's just so important. I just, it just pulls my heart when I see kids suffering from obesity, from malnutrition, and or all these behavioral, I would say, issues or concerns. I'm like, it's not normal, and this is where I think having these harder conversation and to really shaking up people, like, listen, this is not normal. We can do something about it. There's times it's harder, but I'm like, would you rather invest now for having such a healthy living children that thrives, or with potential risk? I mean, kids with autism, the amount of work that it takes, I don't even know. I can't even comprehend or understand what parents even go through with children that they're not the problem. I mean, it's not their fault. And it's bigger than just the parents' conversation where I have like this is a social economic issue that we have. This is like a political issue that we have. But and I think like preconceiving, like kudos to you because I mean we need more people that will address that. So yeah, I know that was I don't
Yeah.
know if that
And
was a
you
rant, but
know, and I'm mainly talking to women who want to have more kids or who haven't had kids yet. If you have already had your kids, don't feel guilt. I mean, I do work with a lot of kids,
Mm,
and I'm able to, help these parents with, their child's, constipation, their eczema, autism, things like that. But really, just the stress I see from parents, when they're dealing with just like chronic gut issues and behavioral stuff, mental health issues with their kids, autism specifically. I mean, those moms. There's been studies on autism moms and how they've got like more cortisol and more stress. They experience more stress than like combat soldiers. So I mean, it's just,
wow.
even if you can help these parents and heal these kids, and get these kids in optimal health, which I fully believe is absolutely possible. I see it every day. That stress that you'll have to endure, and it's just easier if we can just reach parents before they conceive. And I always say, like, it's a fact with research that complications in pregnancy have a high association with chronic disease across the lifespan of that child. And there's a very clear link between health in the prenatal period before birth and the postnatal period after birth. So if we can just focus on mom and dad, it's not just mom. We know men nowadays,
Yes.
they've got, lower testosterone, like the metabolic issues, which I'm sure you see. Some of the dads I work with, I just, and the husbands I work with, like major metabolic issues going on. I see just so many things brewing. And, with even with like sperm count, motility, all of that is down. So, dads definitely play a role as well,
Mm-hmm.
just moms. And ideally, I do actually work with some moms and dads, some women and men, before they conceive. And I always love that. Like when they contact me and they're like, we both want to be in optimal health. We want to conceive in like a year. So I love that. That's probably my favorite thing is when, I'm connecting with a woman and, her husband on preconception prep.
Oh, that's so good. And I think like this is a huge thing and or a big misconception with that it's only about the woman the woman, the mom. No, it's both. Your sperm has to be so healthy. I mean, it's yeah, it's very sad because I mean, I don't know. I don't know what it's like, in a male perspective or brain. It's not a conversation I've had before per se, but I'm like how do we think that it's actually just about that the mom, I just it blows my mind. But there's one thing with like B9 and when we go back to like MTHFR, how it's so important in the first it was it the first 6 weeks of preconception or after conception if I recall, and how in neurological development and all these things there's a very tight window in response to like that specific nutrients. And I think a lot of people, and it's seen in a lot of people with like autism, with MTHFR, we're looking at multiple, like infertility is going to be an issue. There's so many things. Preeclampsia, I can't recall like what preeclampsia is per se, but maybe you can approach on that. And I know MTHFR is really connected also with preeclampsia.
Yeah, I think you can really
So
tie that back like a lot of, you can look upstream for really any like complication in pregnancy. And even with women who don't have HG and they've got, nausea just in the first, we've kind of been taught like that's normal. But, I do feel like I do see a lot of, not with women with HG specifically, I do see more deeper root causes, but even with women who have just like some nausea, like morning sickness, I do see a lot of like liver, gallbladder kind of stress, not getting enough protein, and blood sugar imbalances are pretty huge. So I think just getting an optimal health before can really help you kind of go through those months of pregnancy, not feeling miserable and, not having to be, on bed rest and just, have it be like it's almost like a
I
year of your
know.
life. So, you know,
It's pretty darn long feeling like this shitty every freaking morning. It's like, it's sad. I'm like
yeah.
kudos to women, because I'm like, man, I have no idea what women goes through. Like, it's they're a completely different like being. Like, it's completely different. So many things are so different with female, and so you have to consider that. So
Mhm.
it's a full-time job.
Yeah. And
My goodness.
I almost like hate bringing up the Kardashians. They're like always on my I don't follow them. I don't watch the show, but I always seem to still know what's going on in their lives from social media. But, even when you look at the Kardashians, there's so many of them. And, two of them have had to use surrogates to conceive. One had to do
Mm-hmm.
IVF. But when you look at and they also have a lot of health issues. Like I know, like Chloe has like
Yeah.
chronic migraines. Kim has psoriasis. Like they have so many health issues. And you look at their mom, and like their mom conceived kids into her 40s. Like I don't remember how the when she had her
Yeah.
last child, Kylie. I think it was like 43 or something. But she had like no issues conceiving all six kids, and doesn't have those same issues. So I think we could see like there's definitely,
Yeah.
some of them are Gen X, and some of them are millennials,
Yeah.
but you can just kind of see like the progressive like worsening of health
Absolutely. Uh-huh.
fertility. Now I think it's like 1 in 6 couples have a hard time conceiving or have unexplained
Yeah.
fertility issues, and it's just not we're not going in a great direction as a society.
No. And it's not like if it's I mean, there's like I think geography will have a higher impact in people and where you live. I think your postal code does impact overall your health 100%. There's so much around that, especially in the U.S. I would say more than anywhere else. Well, don't want to be like some clueless, but and in regards to Kim Kardashian, I'm like, well, Kim, I'm like, maybe we need to focus more on nutrition and Ozempic.
I know.
And not that I have anything wrong with Ozempic. I have used semaglutide, so Ozempic is not a drug. Period. This is why like people, I'm like, no, it's a peptide, it's a protein. So semaglutide Ozempic is just like insulin that you'll get and give to somebody that is type 1 diabetes. Like it's a protein.
Mhm.
That's all it is. But I mean, pharma just ended up putting a patent on some form so that he can actually call it a drug and make money out of it. But it's been around for like 20 years. But yeah, preconception, like, I mean, before this is a big thing. And so many people, all weight loss, fat loss, all it's so predominant and it always will, period. But I think like if you're, I think, I'm not, I'm assuming like most of your clients, it's if they're wanting to get pregnant, but I don't know, is it on some of your clients' mind that they actually also want to lose weight at the same time? I don't know if that's a thing, or
Yeah,
but I think the
some of
focus needs to
them.
be
Yeah, I do have some who
right.
part of like preconception they do want to get, in just a better shape physically. It's more so I see postpartum than, preconception. Um, but yeah, I do deal with a lot of the weight loss clients and kind of
Mm,
figuring out, and I think with women, you have to have the conversation because it's kind of foreign to a lot of women. Because a lot of us, I know with my mom, I used to go to her like Jenny Craig and Weight Watchers meetings as a kid.
mm.
She was doing like Atkins diet.
Wow.
Yeah, like the yo-yo
Really?
diet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of us
Yeah, my
experience.
mom did Weight Watchers, I think.
Yeah, and I think we've just kind of been ingrained in us that we have to like count calories, and like it's so much more than counting calories. You know, your metabolism is just a lot more complex than that. It's not always just about like calories in, calories out. um, there's a lot of like underlying conditions that cause women to like hold on to weight. And I see some women who just cannot lose weight and they're eating like 800, 1,000 calories a day. And they're like, I don't understand why I'm not losing weight. I'm like, it's not the calories. That's not
No,
the, there's so much more
no.
at play.
Kaiko is there's so much around Kaiko that it's just like so wrong. Yes, it has a say with Kaiko, calories in, calories out. So that's what Kaiko stands for.
Mhm.
But I'm like, and what I've learned is just the more the less you eat, the less your metabolism it's just gonna go down, and your body has to accommodate because it thinks you're starving. Okay,
Mhm.
perfect. You're not getting enough calories in. That's okay. We know what it's like. It's just like you're in your winter season. You're not getting enough food. Let's downregulate your metabolism. But then when you start reintroducing more food, it will be done. It has to be done like in progress. But that's yeah, I couldn't be further from the truth. Kaiko is just like it's oh my goodness. It's, some people just still do that. I'm like it's crazy, crazy.
Yeah, it's one of those things like cholesterol that's just going to be really hard to die. You know, all these misconceptions in health,
Oh,
like
cholesterol. Yeah,
yeah, it just takes like
and I mean I
people never die. The misconceptions like just never die.
I know with cholesterol, it's such a huge thing because when you look at the research, and I know through like the blood chemistry and what you've gone through and learn, I'm assuming the same, but I realized that like the levels or ranges that we go by is like it can get higher, like no problem. Like people under the age of 60 should be between I don't know how I feel with like as low as 120. I don't know about that one, but I would say at least above 140 to up to 260, which is not even close to what like anything above 200, people start screaming the alarm. I'm like, well, that means nothing.
Right.
Like, what's the breakdown of this cholesterol? What it's like, do you run a lot of lipoproteins?
Oh yeah, yeah, I do, and I see
Yeah.
so many issues with the
Mm,
lipoproteins. Um, and yeah, with the cholesterol, I mean, I like to see. I think with even to make like sex hormones, you know, you really in vitamin D. I mean, I think your cholesterol needs to be like at least 150, and I do see a lot of women who have
hmm
cholesterol lower than that. You know, I've just reviewed some blood work last week, and I had 3 women who, you know, their cholesterol was like 110, 120.
Oof, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And I know what it's like to have low cholesterol. It's been a story of my life for the past 3 years. So, but it's an ongoing thing that I'm like digging, and we had some help. But this is why, like, if cholesterol is the backbone of your hormones, well, it's going to be really difficult to make it. And poor bile, I think it's going to be it's the big issue with a lot of people, or stagnation, fatty liver. Fatty liver is on the rise. It's insane. So there's like I want to go through this workshop because there's a lot that we can do and screen, but fatty liver on blood chemistry is almost like most people will miss it. And yeah, I think it's impacting more people than ever. If you see like a hemoglobin A1C of like above 5.7, start looking into it. It's so common.
Oh
But do
yeah.
you see a lot of people but I mean, I don't know, like, have you had people that come to you before preconception, or I haven't had that yet, like somebody that has been diagnosed like with fatty liver per se. But is that something you see
I
commonly?
rarely see anyone diagnosed with fatty liver.
I
Occasionally,
know.
like a you know a husband or a dad that I'm working with, who's maybe like late 30s, 40s. I see it. I feel like it is missed quite a bit, and I think most
Hmm.
doctors. I mean, I think they mostly look at AST and ALT for that. So that you know they want it to be I mean, the reference ranges, the standard lab reference range is wild. I mean, I feel like if for most of my clients, um, most things are not elevated or low when you look at it from the standard lab reference range. I mean, we know like those ranges are created based on averages of people who go in every year to get their blood drawn. And we know a lot of those people they're at the pathology state, they're at the diagnosis state where they've got, significant
Well,
chronic illness.
was it 85, 90% of Americans are metabolically ill? Like,
Yeah.
we're not talking like 10%. Like, we're talking like this is population at a mass that is actually ill. Like, come on, people. Like, this is not normal. And did you see in the past 3 years after the nonsense that happened, ranges have gone bigger, wider?
Yes, I have seen that. I have seen that change on
Yeah.
normal. Yeah. Yeah, they're just kind of trying
And
to.
you can have as low as 0.
I know they're trying to consistently widen it, so because they probably don't know how to deal with this, and
It's easier to just stretch the range and big deal. Everything, anyways, is idiopathic, so we just don't know how to deal with anything. I'm not discrediting medical doctors at all. Like I kudos to MDs. I think I will always say this, and this is where I learn a lot because I come from a place where before I was just like so hurt by the medical system in many ways. Mentally, I would say not physically in some ways, yes. But it's like it's hard to say like 100%. But I know that it's for a lot of people that try to get healthy and figure out what's going on, what's the root cause of my issues, and we go through. You have to go through such a journey for most people to actually get to like, okay, where I start somewhere, and when you start digging and learning, it's so overwhelming, of course. But I think remembering the basic, like the foundation, but just stop eating junk. Number one, it's like it's all the same stuff that I think most people know what we need to do. Obviously, more movement, walking, and all these things. Sleep being the first one. Nobody sleeps nowadays, so it's really hard to. I would say. So, how sleep impactful? And I'm sure like this is obviously part of the conversation that you have with preconception.
yeah, I mean, I feel especially with moms, getting optimal sleep is really like nervous system health. You really can't feel, and also blood sugar regulation is highly dependent as well on your sleep. And I think a lot of us were kind of like scrolling social media, like we're scrolling TikTok at night,
I know.
like lots of blue light coming in throughout the day. None of it, like, people don't exercise, so their body's just like not physically tired at the end of the day. Their body's
Hmm.
not tired; they feel tired. But I
Yeah,
that optimal sleep is definitely important. Like how not just how many hours do you sleep, but when you wake up, do you feel rested? There's a lot more to it,
exactly.
sleep hygiene than just how many hours did you get. But we are lacking in how many hours of sleep people are
Yeah.
getting. And I think even in like the like you can probably relate like with the like entrepreneur world, there's always this like you can sleep when you're
Oh,
dead, like
that's
I'm like
fucking
what.
bullshit. Like, come on. You'll actually die faster if you don't sleep, and you'll
You
be counterproductive. I'm a testimony of it, and I mean, it's for I think most people with sleep. Like, genetics plays a huge role in sleep, 100%. Like, I can't stress that one enough because if you have cortisol dysregulation or imbalances, or how stress or your life impacts to you, is highly dependent on your genetics too.
yes.
Blueprint. That's where like people with like slow calm, like COMT, like myself, yeah, I'm more to have a high tendency to not cope as easily with eye spikes or cortisol or stressful times in my life, which I'm aware. It doesn't mean like I'm broken. Oh, absolutely. You can come on, you can shift that. This is why it's so important. So, and like for myself, I know that, and it's so funny because I track with a BioStrap. I don't know if you use an Oura-ring. I want one at some point, but it's so funny because I have my sleep onset. How long it takes me to fall asleep? It's like literally, I have a window between. It is like 15 to 25 minutes, but the amount of time of awakening at night is always on point with my genetics, which is about an hour and a half of less sleep every night.
Hmm.
And that's like, I've been tracking over time, and I'm like, yep, I just know that I need to have like 8.5, 9 hours of sleep, and it makes such a huge difference
Yeah, these are
for
things
so
I
many
really
people. And I think,
as one
and
I'm sorry.
women as well too.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Sorry, there's that delay. So sorry I cut you off.
yeah, one of the reasons I'm just so fascinated with genes, and I do see a lot of women, and I think that the research kind of shows like women typically need more sleep than men to like feel rested. But that genetic information would be very helpful for a lot of the women I work with who tell me things like I have to sleep like no, I have some who tell me they have to sleep like 9.5 hours in order to feel like rested. So it would be good to know, like, are there
Mm.
genetic, SNPs or mutations out there that are kind of causing that for that person?
Yeah, and I think like the clock gene, there's so much more into it too. But it's, yeah, sleep, I think it's just I mean, and with genetics, it's just so important. It's just I can't and then one funny thing too as well, with like a lot of people with histamine problem have, I don't know if you've seen this, that or female that have histamine issues don't have histamine problem when they're pregnant. If
Yeah,
that's something,
no,
because I know with the placenta big.
yeah, I see that a lot. I actually just had one of my clients message me who's pregnant, and she said I was just beginning to work with her, like, but she kind of got pregnant, so we kind of had to halt a couple things. But we were working on underlying conditions for her eczema flares, and she told me, she's like, for some reason during pregnancy, like I don't have any flares. It's like
Mm,
99% better. I think she's in her first trimester still. And I'm like, yeah, that's very common. Your immune system kind of switches um, during that pregnancy period. So a lot of women feel actually better. A lot of women with autoimmunity feel better
mm-hmm.
in pregnancy. And then like right after birth, it
Get
kind of
pregnant. Well, the cool thing with this is because your placenta produces a ton of DAO, oh my gosh, diamine oxidase. So
yeah.
the enzyme that breaks down histamine when you're pregnant, which those people that had histamine issues, they have genetics for sure in the DAO or HMAT. So either neurological on a cellular level or either in the gut mostly. So if you have poor gut function, so is the connection, which is so cool. But you can modulate that. But yeah, I think it's such a thing that I came across, which that I was like, whoa, this is so interesting. I mean, so many things happen during pregnancy. It's crazy.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
so I think like, but you need calcium, you need copper for this to actually work properly, and you need to have healthy gut function. So
Oh
you
yeah.
know,
So many things that are,
yeah.
I mean, when I see like, my clients' HTMAs, I mean, there's just so many like deficiencies, so many mineral imbalances. And I think one of the things with prenatals is that, it's a one size fits all approach. And I know people love one size fits all because it's just easier, it's cheaper. um, but it doesn't work for people. I mean, prenatals are, you don't know if they're the vitamins or the minerals are in the best form. There can be harm taking things that you don't need to take. It can cause mineral imbalances in the body because the body works together, like minerals work together.
Yeah.
Um, so that's one of the issues with prenatals is it's likely not in the best form for everybody. Like for me with B12, you often see B12 in prenatals as like the methyl version. And I don't do as well with that version as being like the only version of
Mm-hmm.
B12 that I take. I do better with like a Dino. Um, but it's just like which form is best for you. It's going to kind of be like one size fits all because there's so many things in there. And these prenatals, they kind of cram so many things, but it's even at best, it's like
Mm-hmm.
bare minimum and can actually cause, more imbalances when you're taking things that you need to know exactly what your deficiencies are and like how your minerals are balanced or imbalanced before you start taking like iron and copper and things like that. Like some
Oh.
women have copper toxicity. So, you don't really, it's better to know exactly what's going on. So you can do like a custom type of nutritional support during pregnancy and before, to really support your body versus kind of this one size fits all approach.
Hmm. Yeah, and I see it over and over. Like, I don't know, I've been pretty vocal around this. Like, I have a big iron and copper love because obviously with like hemochromatosis. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously, as a woman, it's probably better when you're having your menses, but it's just so important. And this is where I love the work of Dr. Ben Lynch, especially in regards to like prenatals and like his work around he works a lot for a lot of women, for fertility issues or preconception. I think he's just such a smart man. But and iron, this is a whole thing too. And a lot of people, if you're gonna simply just go to Costco, get a prenatal, and oftentimes you'll get like cobalamin in the form of B12, which is non-methylated, and that's an issue because for most people have genetics either in the MTRR genes, and that can be an issue of methylating that cobalamin into an active form. And even in the process, you make more hydrogen peroxide, which you need glutathione in order to counteract just that conversion. We produce so much, like our body is like a free radical producing machine. Every time you make energy, you make free radicals. Like, so it's not bad. Like people say that free radicals are bad for us. No, like you need some, and this is why this like um balance effect that you need. But it's with iron, I'm just like, for me having too much, I'm just like, for women, if there was one thing, I don't know if you use a lot of lactoferrin in your
Yeah,
practice,
I do.
but I looked at, oh, sweet, amazing. And this is amazing before jumping to iron because, and I'm like, I'm so glad you actually do this because iron can harm women neurologically. You could have, and it's not to scare people, but this is actually what it looks like. You can have irreversible neurological damage from supplementing iron. And most people have iron dysregulation.
Oh
You could
yeah.
be anemic, show anemic, but you're actually not, and it's because you're dealing with, like you said, like with an infection, and you can have subclinical sepsis that is dormant, that once your iron, oh, are we having a connection issue? Oh,
Oh, I can hear you.
okay, it's still okay. No, yeah, you're still here. It's just, yeah, it's the whole, I think it's internet. But so this is where like I was learning this, and I'm like, wow, we can have subclinical sepsis and it gets reawakened, and it's not even in the gut. A lot of people think of like LPS, lipopolysaccharide, just the gut. Um, but it's just, no, it can be just in the blood. So that's why I think like the whole iron thing needs to be assessed, And I think like one of the thing too with like blood glucose and copper, like normally you'll see like eye copper under inflammation, which is just normal, but genetically also there's people that can hold on to more copper or more zinc. um so that's one thing that I like to see. But lactoferrin is pretty cool when you look at the research on that stuff. Oh my god, like we had pregnant women that were completely anemic that were given first iron. I don't know if you saw that study. That was so cool because, and they were given lactoferrin. So now, and they had way better results of actually resolving the anemia and without getting the ton of inflammation from taking iron. And this is where I'm so vocal. It just makes my brain, I'm just like having even practitioners in the health space pushing iron IVs, and I'm
Oh,
like, this should be like a life or death thing. Because once you do this, and that's why I had one of my friends, she's a nurse practitioner, and she's like, yeah, my client, after she did it, she felt like shit. I'm like, well, no wonder. I
yes.
mean, you're putting straight iron inside the blood that is not bound and attached to like with transferrin to your iron, and it's not being converted in the right form. You're putting ferrous iron, which should be the ferric form that you need, but need to be bound to transferrin as a
Yeah.
transporter. Ah,
I see
so
that.
how do you see this? Let's
Yeah,
talk about this. How do you feel about this, Mara?
love the iron topic because I have personally struggled with anemia for just I probably my whole life. And I think we kind of just look at doctors kind of look at ferritin as like their end all be all marker. But as you and I know, like it could be helpful for high ferritin as like an inflammation marker, but it's not like it's not a great marker for your iron status or storage, or even figuring out like what's going on with your iron and why if you are low, if you are in fact low, if you've ran a full thyroid or a full iron panel, why exactly is that happening? And I do see I've had probably 5 women I've worked with who've had iron IVs as instructed by their doctor. And they all tell me they felt horrible after that. And like all these health issues kind of happened after that. And, there's so many different root causes. I'm sure, like even like hypothyroidism, like a lot of women some women, it can be as simple as you're not getting the nutrients you need to even make heme. You're just really deficient. So your body can't, even make heme in the first place. So giving iron, it just doesn't make sense. You can do like even with some metals, like heavy metals, that can cause issues with iron. So it's really, really important. Very passionate about the iron topic and anemia, but
I know.
That's something
I love it.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of women struggle with that, and more men I see struggle with kind of like iron overload and issues with that. But women I see more like they're anemic, but they were just told to take an iron supplement. So, and even in the functional medicine space, that's kind of still what people are doing.
It's huge. Oh yeah. I'm like, this is mind blowing because I actually had Dr. Kirsty Sutton, which she's the founder of When I'm Book. Like she did the Iron Curse, which I like, kudos to her. I mean, such great, like with genetics and a lot of people have genetics in the transferrin. There's a lot of transferrin genes also that can make you more prone to anemia, but iron overload is like, it's so funny because on blood work you could look at a ferritin, but because they have inflammation and because they have low iron, it could actually look completely normal, like completely normal. You could have a ferritin of 70, or 50, or 55, or 60, but because the inflammation will raise ferritin. So this is why it's a poor man's marker. Yes, it's good. You need it.
That's why one of the issues with blood chemistry that I'm sure you've come across is like people look at it like just by marker. They make recommendations based on one marker, and you can't do that. You have to look at like a whole picture. You have to look at patterns. Like that's how, we have to utilize critical thinking, and we have to draw conclusions and connect dots. And, it's a lot of work on our part. That's what we have to do. We're investigators.
Oh man.
It's just not as simple as just like, oh, you have low ferritin. Great. Here's some iron supplement. Like it's wild. Like I've seen people on iron supplements, a lot of the people I work with, and I run a full iron panel, and they're not actually anemic. So it's
exactly.
Yeah, it's terrible. Just how people are kind of making, even with vitamin D. I mean, there's so much that goes into vitamin D. You can't just look at 25 hydroxy. You have to look at a lot of different things to know like what's going on with vitamin D. And I think I've mentioned on my Instagram before, like how impactful like genetics were, like knowing my genetics.
Oh, it's huge on vitamin D. So important.
It's like my body doesn't want to make it for any reason. Like I can't convert it. I can't make it well from the sun on my skin. I have like all the mutations for vitamin
I'd love to see your genes because I'm like, that's where like your VDR, there's so many other genes with it too. Like that is more like your 25OH and your 125OH, but VDR is one. I have it too. Like, and that's why like I joke a lot often with this. I said, in my other life, I was born Latino. I was born to be brown and not white. And if there's one thing of being Caucasian, I'm just like, people say, you need to love yourself. Yeah, I love myself when I'm tan, period. And I don't care. I will disagree with you. And I love a sexy tan. Oh my God. That's why I'll probably, if I'm not in the sun for winter, I will be injecting myself with melanotan the whole winter. I don't care because it makes me feel so good. I love peptides, but have you tried melanotan before?
I haven't. No, no.
Oh my God. Yeah, it does work. Let me tell you that. But there's like on and off. People with mold in the mold space could be actually helpful and autoimmunity and Lyme, and because it
What is
boosts
it
your
called?
MSH.
What is it
Which
called?
one? What?
Well, is it a
It's
peptide?
melanotan 2. Yeah, it's a
Oh,
peptide. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I love
I
it.
haven't.
But anyways, it does work. It's
I've
yeah,
heard.
peptide, and that's where I've been.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I think you're far from your mic.
Oh, here we go. I'll go a little sooner, closer.
There you go.
Yeah, go
Yeah, what
ahead.
were you saying?
With peptides, I haven't like gotten down that rabbit hole yet. Um, I'm on a lot of different rabbit holes right now, but I've heard a lot about peptides and how helpful they can be.
Yeah, I think it's such an amazing tool that I think will be more and more and more used coming down. But at the same time, you just can't forget the foundation. And even if I know we just like touch base on so many things, but it could be, especially like bioregulators, they don't cause problem. Like there's no side effects. Period. These have been like probably the bioregulators. This is why a lot of people are so big in like organ therapy, because there's peptides in it, like taking thymus gland or taking um, thyroid glands, right? Glandulars. That's peptide therapy right there. So when you're looking at, because I do take some thyroid myself a little bit, or adrenal cortex or adrenal from like a beef from bovine, but you can get like specific oral forms. Dr. Kavinson from Russia, they had these like crazy studies of like, was it like over like 10,000 people, men, women, and often in studies you'll see like it's mostly men. That's why like a lot of this studies sometimes not even applicable on women, and you have to consider that. But it was amazing to see this, like how there was zero, like nada side effects at all with all these trials that were like massive for years, that went on for like years and years. So I'm like, wow, this is fascinating. But anyways, I think that's another topic for another day. But and to even like touch base with iron, and just the last step of making heme, you need B6, which
Yeah,
so many people are deficient. And again, I know I bring genetics again, but I'm like, yeah, I mean, I have genetics and B6 deficiency, like prone for B6 deficiency. That's where like genetics alone, it's not. I think it needs to be run side by side with blood work. So
it
this is
does.
just
Yeah,
it's
if I
common sense.
had like my perfect scenario, I would love if people could afford it, I would love to do functional blood work, genetics, and HTMA with every person. And
Yes,
and
yes.
then we'll have some people who do need maybe some more specialized tests like the oat and stuff like that, but it's definitely not everybody. I feel like most people could really just benefit
Mm-mm.
from the blood work. Genes and HTMA would just be so impactful. We could just make such a difference in people's health and like the health of the next
Mm.
generation if we looked at those things.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, it's not that genetics is perfect. Oh, my goodness. What? It's been over 130 years. They still haven't even cracked the code for pH, for God's sake, like in human body. Like, and vitamin D's only been researched for what, 10 years now, or 11 years maybe. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much that we're discovering about the body and its science. It evolves, it changes, and there's so much more. But I think, yeah, targeted like nutrition and having these tools, I think is it's great. So
It's very
but
needed.
yeah, oh my god, so yeah, already an hour, and I could talk all day. I love this conversation, and I think it's beautiful. I think we'll wrap it up, but I think like having you on, I think we can definitely have another episodes soon. And I think like the work that you do and helping kiddos and mom and dads like the preconceiving. It's such a beautiful work and it's so important. You know, if I would to become a dad per se at some point, I don't know. I mean, these are all things that are crucial to do. We need to look up. Yeah, just kids. Like I said, kids deserve the best, and so this is where a lot of these tools and can really help a ton of people. But just understanding more, and that's why I think like these conversations will help over time. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
doing our parts, I will say.
well, I loved this conversation.
Sorry.
I loved this conversation. I think we touched on so many different important concepts that we want people to consider, because I mean, if you don't have your health, you really don't have much. If you're not optimally healthy and you're not thriving, you don't have enough energy to get through the day. I mean, you're not thriving as a human being. So it's great to get that
Mm-hmm.
out there so we can just make a difference in that regard.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think the sense of also like it's so funny. I don't know if you watched that. I just watched the Live to 100 on Netflix.
Mhm.
The blue zone. It's all about the blue zone. And one key thing too that and oftentimes we forget, but the I think for great health and it's so impactful, but community is
Oh
such a
my
huge
gosh,
thing. I
yeah.
mean, like a you know, and I think even in the health space and after like this whole like 3 years, even for myself, and I think to some level, people we can, especially being on the online space, and this is why I think it's so important to link arms with like-minded people. And if you don't have a ton of like people in your life that will support you, like that is like step number one with your health. Like
Oh
it's
my
so
gosh,
important.
it's
And
so overlooked. There's so much research on that, on
mm,
community and just the impact in your body, just even your immune system, your overall health. And like for like now, I feel like I have community for like the first time, and it's definitely
oh,
helped me, and especially for moms. I mean, so many moms don't have a community at all. They're stay-at-home moms. They don't have community. They don't have like close friends. I think it's just very important for our nervous systems, our adrenals, our immune systems to really be around people who you can link arms with. And I love that
yeah,
topic.
and I think like and that really hit me personally myself and it's been such a huge transition, but man, when you're around with people and when you're used to being around people and all of a sudden you're not, like you have to find that sense. It's just it's crucial and I can't stress that one enough. And I think like the studies, like it's clear. I think I don't know if it's I could be wrong, but I don't know if it reduces your life loneliness reduces your lifespan by I don't know how many years, like it's above 9 years, like something crazy.
Oh,
It's insane. Like it's
absolutely.
insane and the amount,
They've done research even
you know.
on, and this happened to my great grandmother, but they've even done research on loneliness and like after you lose your like life partner, um, like your husband or your wife. A lot of times, like they see a huge correlation with like the, the surviving partner kind of passing away pretty quickly,
Yeah.
when they are experiencing like loneliness, after that.
Yeah. Oh, and I think like part of that show, what the big thing that brought to my attention and like what they found in all these people, is the sense of community, but also family. A lot of people like elderly living or moving back in with their kids and some things like how profound it is. Oh, what's happening? Hold on. Trying to get a software update. Oh, no, not now. Um, it's not the time now. But it's like, yeah, and I think we have. It's so funny because I actually, and it's okay. I've moved back in with my parents actually myself. Because I ended up, we're gonna be renting. I ended up renting my place. This place is unoccupied for most of the years I moved in, but I think it's such a good thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. And man, I'm like being around more people and your family, yeah. And I think like as we grew up in such a okay, as you grow up, you want to get away as much as possible from your family. Like this is literally what so many people we live through. But anyways, it's just the sense of community and having people that can be there to hear you and that connects you on such a deep level. Like, and I think of your values, how you think. You don't have to agree on everything, but you got to agree on many things. I strongly agree with that one. So you cannot have a healthy relationship with people if you cannot have some similarity or values that makes you feel safe also too. So and I think the sense of feeling safe is huge. I think there's a lot of people, the nervous system is not in a safe state, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of us have experienced a lot of traumas in our lives, hard times, childhood traumas. So, it's definitely huge in your adult years, to find that community and all that.
Yeah, emotional piece, so important. We can't forget about that. So, but yeah, amazing. Well, this was a slice. But where can people find you or reach you? So they're looking to get and preconception, want to get some work done. How can they get to potentially work with you?
Find me on Instagram. Typically, if you just put in Dr. Mara, Dr.Mara, I'll pop up, but I'm Dr. Mara Bargeron. And I also have a website, which is the same handle, drmarabargeron.com, where you can find me.
Amazing. I'll put out everything in the show notes as well too, your website and your Instagram page so that people can find you. And so it's so good. Such a good conversation. I love this conversation and we'll keep them coming. So, but till for now, but thank you for tuning in, coming on. And we'll have definitely more conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Regen Biome podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes because that's what helps us to be heard and to be seen. If you'd like to connect with me directly or seeking private one-on-one health coaching, or if you have any questions about this episode, please reach out to me directly through my website, regenbiome.com, or on Instagram at JeanFelix_JFT. Thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.